can. And for those that are joining in with us today, appreciate you being here. If you haven't been with us before, welcome in. This is our Epi Compliance weekly podcast. We do these every Tuesday, same time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard. This will be our 63rd episode, Jose. Um, and again, for those that are joining in for the first time, my name is Ray Walters. I'm with Epi Compliance. I'm joined here by my co-host, Mr. Jose Delgado, who works very closely with us. He has 20 plus years experience in healthcare consulting, currently owns a mental telehealth clinic. And a lot of these topics that we are discussing, he can relate very much so too. So happy to have you
Yeah.
here, Jose. And yeah, today, last week we talked about spiteful reviews and how to
Yep.
handle those. And
Yep.
as of recent, I've gotten a couple customers that have reached out asking essentially the same question. And yeah, I'll give you sort of I guess the shortened version of the situation, but medical wellness practice. Patient comes in for a consultation, um, can't afford the service, and patient's friend is offering to pay for service. So the question is, is it a HIPAA violation if the patient agrees to make the payment? And obviously, looking at that aspect, I would say no, but you still want to be careful in terms of your communicate and how you communicate back and forth with the patient.
Well, even though
Um,
this one is relatively simple, I like to, again, for those that haven't seen it and for those that have, I like to run this through as a thought process so that way we can really understand not just this specific example, but anything that's even tangentially close, you can kind of run through the same process and be like, okay, check, we're good here, we're good here, we're good here, we're good here.
yeah.
Right? So let's start with something very, very simple. The third party,
Third part.
regardless of whether you are the patient is a child or an adult, we're going to distinguish that third party as a separate entity. Okay.
Yes.
Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to go ahead and assume for for basic understanding, but realistically, it's not going to matter, and you'll see why in a hot second, that this is a cash service. So either it's not covered by insurance, or it's deemed medically unnecessary, or it's vanity medicine, or we can just keep going down the pipeline, right? Perfect. Okay. Now, with that said and done, we as a practice, we spend all cash the same, whether it's coming from an insurance, whether it's coming from a bank account. We honestly don't know what bank account any credit card is ever attached to when someone pays us their copay. So, on a completely capitalistic sense, doesn't matter to us. Cash is cash, green is green. We spend it the same way. Most of the time in healthcare, we're spending it on payroll anyways, right? So,
Yeah.
so when we look at it, that's the very clear piece of it. Okay, now is the patient if the patient is volunteering information, which I assume they would
In,
have to do,
in this
which is fair
case,
to assume. Well,
obviously. Yeah.
they're going to have to say something to somebody for
Yep.
somebody else to pay for it, right? Like
Yep.
whether they're telling the insurance company, a Christian ministry, a nonprofit, an uncle, a parent, a brother, a spouse, a whatever the case may be, that third party is going to want a certain amount of information. The trick is who gives that third party the information? Think about it this way. If this was an insurance company, this would be coming from us as a prior authorization.
Right.
Everybody's familiar with that. Everybody hates the words prior authorization, but that's essentially what we're doing here. Normally, in these third party cases, though, the patient is getting the money from somewhere else. I've seen some cases where they'll go get a personal loan from a bank for some of these vanity medicine procedures, whether, we can go into all of the plastic medicines. I mean, but even something as simple as veneers. Veneers aren't
Yeah.
cheap, and that's dental. LASIK used to be, for the most part, was considered vanity medicine unless you had a very specific diagnosis, right? So, and LASIK used to be expensive. Now it's cheap. But again, we go back to the same thing. Are we giving the third party the information? In this case, no, right? In this broad case, no. The patient is giving information. Perfect. Are we liable for the information the patient gives? No, because the patient is the patient. They are giving their health information to somebody else. That is with their own informed consent.
Right.
We don't need that because we don't do that. Now, if Bobby, let's put a name to the patient, and let's, to keep things simple, Bobby's parents call us. Can we talk to the third party about said procedure? Because I feel like that's really where the question comes into play. And the answer is very, very simple. Is that third party on the forms? If the answer is no, you can't talk to them. You're going to have to find that information out from whoever you think comes here or whoever you think is coming here. If they say, "Hey, I'm calling to make a payment on this account number for this such and such person," cool. I can do that. I can take payment because I'm taking information. I'm not giving information, right? And I think
Right.
that's kind of where people get caught up is, hey, third party isn't here, but they want to pay over the phone or they want to pay online. Okay, cool. Well, I can take all of the information, can't give the information unless the patient has that third party on their paperwork, right? Because it goes back to TPO, treatment, payment, or operations. That third party is generally in this scenario is not an insurance company. If it were an insurance company, we would be flowing information back and forth. I don't need a consent form. Now, there are not many procedures that I can come up with off the top of my head where I need the consent of the patient to speak to the third party in an extensive manner about about anything, treatment, payment, or operations. Because the patient would be transferring all that information that they would need to give to that third party.
So
Hey
what's your
mom, I need $5,000 for a nose job. Hey son, I need $10,000 for, dentures. You know what I mean? Like, or a new motor chair. You know what I mean?
Well, let me
Like
think of
it's
it, or let me throw this out there because
yeah.
some may think this way, but let's just say again, Bobby. Let's just say not the parents, right? Let's just say it's
Okay.
a just a good friend, right?
Yep.
And friend wants to see, maybe information on the treatment. Now,
Friend can be given marketing material because marketing
okay,
material is marketing material, right? And I can
got
use
it.
the example that we use here in our practice, where's Spravato Clinic. I am more than able and more than happy to give Bobby's friend marketing material because that marketing material is not
What
specific
about
to
treatment
what I'm
details
doing to
and
Bobby. I'm just giving him marketing material about something we offer in the practice.
gotcha. What
It
about
is
treatment
general
details
information.
and or a quote, like a written
Yeah, it
quote?
is.
Same thing,
Yeah.
same
Now,
applies.
if I give Bobby's friend, the quote, what we're quoting him out for the work, Bobby needs to have consent
Got it. So
because
some sort of written
Bobby is
authorization is what is feasible in that
if
particular.
and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, the easiest way to do that is to just have Bobby amend the initial patient paperwork and put the friend on there as someone he can talk to. That is the
Easy fix.
easiest way to do
Yeah,
this.
easy fix.
You don't need new paperwork. You don't need any of that crap. You just go and tell Bobby, here's the form that you filled out. I'm going to print this out, add your buddy's name to it. Initial, once you write the name down, initial and dated. If I'm printing out an old one or if I'm giving him a new one, then on there should be the where we put the date anyways. Boom, bam, we're out of here.
It may
Keep
make
it
make
simple.
sense to do that if they're paying for like several different. treatments, right? I
If it's
guess.
something to where, so for example, let's use dermatology, right? Like they're removing skin tags,
Sure.
or or you're getting a tattoo removed, where this isn't a one-time job. This is a multi-week, multi-month, multi-payment kind of a situation. If that person's picking it up, I mean, yeah, they may want some information, but realistically, as a practice, if I'm dealing a multi-payment situation, you may just want to talk to Bobby's friend and be like, look, man, do you want me to just auto draft this every 2 weeks or every month or whatever the time period that is appropriate for the procedure and the business model, right? But again, if Bobby's friend is not on that paperwork, I can't give him specific information about Bobby's treatment. Now, on the other side of things, if this is for vanity medicine and this is none of our bloody business because we are a capitalist system, we want to caution our patients on situations like this. Because it's one thing to bum $20 for gas till payday. It's another thing to be like, hey, I need $3,000 for this procedure. There's an ethic, there could be an ethical concern that Bobby needs to have with that third party. But again, it's none of our bloody business, right? Because
Yeah,
we're
agree.
not violating any SEC or banking laws. We're not violating HIPAA, OSHA, OIG, DEA. We're not violating FDA. We're not violating any regulations there. So it's really just a matter of personal ethics at that point.
No, I agree.
So
I want to test the audience. I want to see if they're paying attention here.
okay,
So I'm gonna throw a scenario out there, and I want the audience to chime in terms of what you would do in this particular situation. So we're gonna use Bobby as the esteemed
sorry,
patient
Bobby.
here.
This is kind of how it goes, you
So
know?
so Bobby visits a mental health clinic for therapy sessions,
Okay.
and he is financially struggling. His
Yep.
grandfather, we'll just say Bobby Sr., wants
Yep.
the help by paying for the treatment. Bobby Sr. calls the clinic and says, hey, I'd like to pay for Bobby's therapy sessions, but I need to know how many sessions he's had and what's left on the bill.
Okay.
In that situation or that scenario, uh, being a person talking to Bobby Sr., um, what can you do?
You want to wait for the people, or you want me to
Yeah,
answer
I want the
this?
audience to chime in and let us know what you
Let's
would do in that scenario as I guess technically you being a receptionist going through this phone call with Bobby Sr. And again, he's asking, he'd like to pay for Bobby's therapy sessions.
But he
He
wants to
wants
know
to
how
know how,
far in he
yeah, he
is.
wants to know how many sessions, therapy sessions he's in and what's left on his bill. And we'll give
Man,
it a
see, if you're
second.
gonna ask him, let's sign off on the paper to allow Bobby Senior to pay. Interesting. Yeah. Anybody else? I mean, we
Well,
usually have the Jeopardy song in the background just to play, while everybody's.
usually
Although some people may not even remember Jeopardy, so what do I know?
I was gonna say usually I'd put this in the form of a poll, but I kind of just I don't know, just want to see who's paying attention. If his name is not on the HIPAA, I cannot tell.
Yeah, all right, cool. So
So we got a few answers in here.
yeah,
So Jose, you want to break it down?
so this is not a manner of correct answer. It's the most correct answer,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
so, Leticia and Tracy, you're both right, but you're both right in different ways, right? So, the easiest way would be, first off, I want to check to see if Bobby, first of his name, is even on the paperwork to begin with, before I even admit that Bobby Jr. is a patient of ours. So
Absolutely.
then I would go and say, hey, if Bobby, first of his name, is on that paperwork, cool, here's where we're at. And then I could just go into his whole patient ledger. If first of his name is not on there, then I go and say, hey, put a number to it. Bobby owes $100, and by the end of everything, he'll owe another 400. All right, cool. If he is not on the paperwork, I should only talk about what is currently on that said ledger
Absolutely.
because that's what's on there. Now again, life is so much easier. Just get them to fill out the paperwork. Just get, and this is a completely normal situation where, hey, I thought the patient was coming in for one thing, and we see this all the time in kind of these ad hoc specialties, these program style specialties, these wellness specialties. Excuse me. You think that you're coming in, oh, it's only going to be about one session, two sessions, $300, but now it's $1,500.
Right.
You know, you see this a lot in those kinds of situations, but you're already too far in as a patient. You got to figure it out, right? So, um, is where you see other people's cards come into play because again, how many times do we have a minor that comes to pay for services? They don't have a credit card. When was the last time you saw a 15-year-old with a Chase credit card? You know that's their parents' card, but you're not even paying
Right.
attention. You're just swiping the card,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So this is where we come in and we go and say, okay, cool. So I can always take payment on an account. If you're the kind of practice that associates account numbers, let's use this like a utility, like an AT&T, I can always call in, hey, I'm looking to make a payment on account number 123. Cool. Boom. There you go. That's all that's needed. You don't need to give them any more information. You take the information, you pay the account, we move on. Everybody's happy. Well, everybody's happy except for the person that's out the money, right? But everybody, the patient's happy, the practice is happy, so that's kind of what's important, right? But yeah, I mean, there isn't really a way to shortcut this, but it's not really something that should add a lot of stress to your practice. And if it is adding a lot of stress to your practice, I would recommend retraining the staff. Because if the staff doesn't know that something this basic is occurring, it probably means they're also not checking that same paperwork before they talk to a patient's family or a patient's third party, whatever they may be. I mean, I literally have situations where the spouse is not on the paperwork. I can't talk to the spouse if they're not on the paperwork. If the spouse changed their name, but the patient did not change their name, you can't talk to them. Even if you know, you can't because you can't risk it. For them, hey, it's whatever. It's my blah, blah, blah's information. But for us, it's our practice because all of a sudden they make a big old stink about it. And now we got to get lawyers involved. And, our defense can't be, hey, who cares? It's just the patient's blah, blah, blah. That
Right.
let me tell me how that's going to go in court. Yeah, all
Not
right.
well.
Defendant is guilty and owes a stupid amount in civil penalties, and then you got to deal with OCR. You don't want to deal with that nonsense. It's not worth it. So just make sure that that paperwork is clean. If you have an older population base, especially if you're in an area where the vanity medicine is could be minorly risky, annually I'd get them to redo the paperwork. Hey, or at least review it. Hey,
Absolutely.
is this correct? Are these the same people that you want on there? Just to prevent this kind of stuff, because you never know when the dementia and Alzheimer's is going to kick in, and then now all of a sudden you can't talk to the patient's next of kin. You can't talk to them about patient or treatment or anything,
Right.
right? So you really want to make sure that that piece of paper protects you so much. In my personal opinion, there are two pieces of paper that you have to make sure the patients truly, truly, truly understand in that entire big old packet that everybody gives out. You ready? One is the consent form and who you can talk to. Usually you put those together. The second one is if the insurance don't pay for it, you know you're going to pay for this, right? Those two forms out of everything else are the most important forms to me. Everything else can be done at varying points in the visit. Hey, if they don't fill out all of their information, their medical information, perfect. That's what an MA is for. Hey, that's what even the provider is for. If you're dealing with a bunch of medications, hey, Bobby, I know that the MA already asked this, and I know you just filled this out, but are these all of the medications you're on? I promise you, there's a reason why everybody asked 3 times. The medical proxy. Gina, if that medical proxy is not on that paperwork or they don't show you paperwork saying that they're a medical proxy, you can't talk to them. If someone shows up in my mental health practice or infectious disease practice with a medical proxy, but they're not on that paperwork, I take a risk every single time. If I'm in neurology, if I'm dealing with Alzheimer's patients, Parkinson's patients, people that cannot communicate with the staff effectively, we must have that paperwork. So whether they have problems paying or they have problems communicating, those issues we need to protect ourselves from. And that consent form is huge for that. That consent form plus that form, that list form. Can I get the medical proxy person name update? Absolutely. Absolutely. You can update that form every
Always.
visit.
Yeah.
Every visit you can update that form. Sorry. You can, I mean, it's just a matter of that's why I normally say annually, especially for Medicare patients. Because the Medicare population in the US has a tendency where you'll see them once and they'll be perfectly fine doing an Irish jig in the waiting room. And then the next visit, their health deteriorated so fast and it's only been 90 days. You have no idea when that time comes in. But if you never received any paperwork, if you've never received any paperwork, are they even your patient? Because if you don't have any paperwork on the patient, you probably only have referral paperwork. And at that point, then, if you only have referral paperwork and the medical proxy is establishing the patient, then the proxy paperwork is effective. I would recommend still scanning a copy of that proxy paperwork for CYA purposes. But what you're looking at then is a matter of establishing that patient with the patients, if that makes any sense at all. Um, so
I learned
it's
something new there.
yeah, I mean, it's the
Good.
scenario, right?
Yeah, no, it's
Because
good to know if that scenario comes up, how
I
to
mean,
address it.
yeah, I mean, and you see this every day, especially in the southern states where you have a family member. What if it's for a family member or the wrong one? If it's a family member of the wrong one, how are you going to know? If they're a new patient, you're not going to know. But so I mean, this is where we double check and triple check, right? But if you, all the time, we'll have patient family members that are their caretakers, but also the family member, and they make sure that they're on the paperwork for that patient. It is extremely common to have a proxy or a caretaker to be the one that follows up on the referrals. If it's a family member, usually it's because the patient, Bobby, is not taking care of himself and refused treatment for a long period of time. And now the family member is getting involved. The child is usually the one getting involved. It's like, all right, you've been avoiding the cardiologist forever. We're going. You've been avoiding the neurologist forever. We're going. You need to go and see this. We're going. Stop doing this. And so then they'll start being the ones that call, hey, I need to get Bobby on the schedule. Hey, I need to get Bobby on the schedule. Hey, you don't know me, but I'm a new patient. I need to get Bobby on the schedule. So that's where you start having that conversation with those kinds of deteriorating cases. Now, Bobby may be the caretaker, and we're coming off the topic a little bit, but Bobby may be the caretaker, but he may not be the third party. So if Bobby's kid is the caretaker and calling you, the caretaker usually is not the person making payments. It could be the estate, Bobby's estate. It could be
Right.
Bobby's insurance. It could be Bobby's family member that doesn't live in this in the area. You know, it could be Bobby's child that is at work but has a grandkid taking him to the office. Like there's a lot of different ways that this could really go when we're talking about medical proxies. And the medical proxy paperwork is it can be very, very simple. There's no reason to overcomplicate it. But if you have a patient, and this is where we want to start with us, because usually people in the healthcare industry are awful with this stuff. You want to make sure that you have paperwork for medical proxy. Like currently, my wife and my father are my medical proxies. And they both know I came into this world with someone wiping my butt. I'm not leaving it the same way. So if something happens to me, put me down like old Yeller, you know? So, but that's a personal decision I make of sound mind and body that I am telling them these are my wishes and they know this and it's written down that they can do this, right? So we want to make sure that these kinds of things are documented properly on our end. Because once we go through the process, we become more knowledgeable about the process so we can help our patients more, right? Because it sucks to me that every single time there's a patient that is difficult, they're so freaking good at paperwork.
Right.
So freaking good. And you're just sitting here like, you don't need this. But you figured out the system and the paperwork to be able to do this. Um,
Well,
yes, we can absolutely do that. But then you have those other patients that they're so on the other side that you're not a bleeding heart because you deal with 30 patients a day, but that one patient is really getting you and you really want to do something for that patient and your hands are tied. And those are the ones that I really, really like helping because those are the ones that truly appreciate it because they feel like nobody is there. And those are the ones that are the reason why we're in healthcare. Because there's no way you're going to tell me that you're listening to a podcast like this or you're in healthcare, even if you have a completely capitalist motivation, you get something different when you serve others, right? So that's how we do this. So when we go back to it, we want to make sure that the third party payer we have paperwork on. Notice that third party, if it's an insurance company, what do we have? We have the insurance. We have an insurance card that we have to get. And if we don't have that, if we have one number off that insurance number, off that insurance product, oh man, all of you, I know all of you that deal with billing, you're sitting there, you're feeling it with me because you know what's going to happen if that one number is off, if that one letter is not capitalized. When you bill that claim, they're going to kick it back so fast and tell you, nope, not one red cent. You got to expect that it's going to be something similar, right?
yeah.
But the easiest way to get around it is just have that third party person on that paperwork, get it amended by the patient, and we move on. It's not going to take long. The patient won't complain because if they do complain, this services won't get paid. If the services don't get paid, patient doesn't get
It
services.
doesn't get served.
You know what I mean? Like, especially in vanity care cases, all right, cool. So those veneers that you fitted, those dentures you fitted, yeah, you ain't getting
You
them.
get them now.
I'll hang out and just do a mouth puppet, like so but yeah, so I mean, that's for this one, that's really all I've got. I hope that the process that we go through when we're dealing with these scenarios, though, kind of helps you out for those scenarios that come up that are you feel like they're one-offs or unique to your business model. You can kind of run through it. And it's just basically, it's kind of like a systems check. Like, hey, all right, am I breaking any banking laws? No. Cool. Am I breaking any HIPAA laws? Maybe. Okay, we'll come back to this one. FDA, ATF, we just run through the alphabet agencies. All right. And then you go through and say, all right, if they're a Medicare patient, because there's special Medicare rules. depending on the state, is there a question about scope of practice? Can we do it? Doesn't mean that just because we could do it doesn't mean we should do it, right? Everyone remembers Jurassic Park. Um, and so this is where we kind of sit here and we go, all right, let's go back to the ones that pinged. This is the HIPAA one. Get
Yeah.
that paperwork signed. Once
Yep.
that one piece of paper is signed, you can tell that patient whatever you want. What do you want to know?
Yep.
Oh, they said they were 120. Nah, they ain't 120. They weigh 150. They lying to you. Oh, they said the license says 5'8". No, bro, they're 5'6". Like you can tell them everything once they're on that paperwork. You know,
The bottom line, key takeaway, get the paperwork signed. It
get that
makes
paper.
life
It's
easier.
one piece of paper. It's
Yeah.
one piece of paper. But that one piece of paper causes so many headaches for practice on the admin side. And again, if this problem is popping up a lot, you need to retrain your staff. When you talk to a patient's whatever, are you checking that they're on the paperwork?
Use the
Are
use
you
the
confirming the
use the
identity?
scenario that we used earlier, role play.
Okay. So let's say I'm Bobby's brother. Yeah, yeah, right. So I'm Bobby's brother. I'm calling to know about Bobby's stuff in his what's going on with his treatments. Perfect. How does the staff confirm that I know who Bobby is and that they can talk to me? Hey, what's Bobby's birthday? Hey, where was Bobby live?
Hmm.
Hey, you know what I mean? Like you can
Yep.
go through those normal questions and then you can confirm with the paperwork. Cool, you pass this check, you pass that check. Perfect. If I have to do it every freaking time I call a utility company, even though I put in all the information every time I do it with a banking or a credit card company, why is it shouldn't be uncommon for healthcare to do the same. You know what I mean? Like there
I
are
like
certain things that we should not worry about inconveniencing the patient's family or the patient because they should be used to this by now. I can't tell you how many phone systems and companies I call. All right, put in or say your account number. I put in and say my account number. I put in and say my name. All right, perfect. Then they patch me to a person 20 minutes later, and I got to repeat the same information again.
endless loop.
At least we're only asking for it once. We
Yeah.
don't ask for it on the phone system and then in person. We're just asking for the one time in person.
Yep.
We make it so much easier. So realistically, guys, it's just keeping it simple. Keep it simple. You don't need to add paperwork. Just amend it. Move on.
Keep it simple, stupid. Kiss Miffin.
Yeah, that there's a reason why that is such an effective phrase, right? So, yeah, I mean
No,
that's
I
all.
appreciate your insights, Jose. I really do. And if you guys have any questions, concerns, please feel free, or maybe some scenarios that you like to share personally. Please feel free to put in chat. We'll take some time to answer those. In the meantime, while those are coming in, I did post a link to our YouTube channel. We do post these videos on our YouTube channel typically a day after our broadcast. So just be on the lookout. Please like and subscribe to our channel. Like I said, this is our 63rd episode. We've been doing these since October of 2023, so there's plenty of content to go through. Um,
Compliance, but entertaining. That's the way I
yeah,
kind of try to look at this.
we try to make these more conversational. Not speaking off of PowerPoint or anything like that.
I
And like I
definitely
said,
PowerPoint on every
we
training
try to
ever.
use some real world scenarios. But yeah, please like and subscribe. And other than that, Jose, we'll be talking about this was a topic we're booked up for the rest of February. We're working on
Ooh,
March schedule right now, but next week we're going to be talking about that Siri lawsuit. And
yeah.
I'm going to post the article here in chat in case you guys plan on attending. We will be talking about Apple has to pay $95 million to settle a
Yeah.
Siri privacy lawsuit. And long story short, if
This one,
anybody
this
that's
one, I'm
using,
not gonna lie. This one on the conspiracy theory side of me, Like really just brings up my hackles and it concerns me.
Tell me.
It really
Well,
does,
what's
man.
what's concerning is the fact that anything that you input the Siri, it's keeping track of that stuff, and that to me is kind of crazy. Kind of
I
crazy.
mean, but you've got everything. You've got everything you need to worry about, right?
Yeah,
Because you're not talking to the phone, and this is the same with Google, right? Let's not single out Siri here, but any
true,
of
true.
those audio devices that are voice command, they're recording.
Yep,
What are they doing with that information?
selling it.
Like this is a potential for, even though this is a civil lawsuit, it's outside of the statute of limitations for OCR to come after them and HHS to come after them, but this could be a serious problem for quite a few companies. And if you're a small practice, this is the kind of thing where it makes you want to be like, all right, well, now I got to turn off my phone, but I have my laptop open because I need to use an EHR.
Yep.
Like what happens? I mean, this goes to even how Google's incognito mode was facing a lawsuit as well. And that one was a nice price on that one too,
How
because they
long
were
ago was
selling
that one?
data. Huh?
The incognito. How long ago was that? I didn't know about that one.
Um,
This one was pretty recent. I think this article was what, well, updated January 2nd of this year. Okay, so it happened
the
and the
incognito was 2016.
okay. The Siri was it says the class period runs from September 17th through December 31st of 2024 or December 17th of 2014 to December 31st of 2024.
That's a
Pretty
big
crazy.
window.
That is huge.
And with how many providers have Apples and nurses have Apple products, 95 million is small.
No, yeah, that's you
You
think
know
about it.
95 million
That
is small.
timeline, that is
That's
pretty,
a massive timeline.
yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Apple was paying the news to bury this so more people don't join the lawsuit.
Yeah, we'll
Hmm.
be diving into that and
Let's have some fun with it then.
yeah.
I'm looking
And
forward to it.
other than that, I got one last thing to throw in here. I'm gonna throw this link here in the chat. So any of our long-standing listeners, which I see a few in here, you may have heard us mention this a few times about our certified HIPAA security officer training. Jose and myself, we used to participate in a local conference that we put on at Epi Compliance. We called it Epi Conferences. I'm going to post a link to our conferences site as well. But this is one of the courses that we taught. It is a certification. It's good for what, Jose, up to 3 years?
3 years? I think it's 3 years.
But just to give you sort of a helicopter view, if you're a medical professional, compliance officer, maybe a student interested in getting into this field, this is a very sought for certification. It really gives you sort of a deeper perspective into HIPAA and the law that follows it. And well, Jose and myself taught the course. We've also taken it, and yeah,
It's an 8 hour boot camp
yeah.
followed by a test the next day.
So,
So
and yes,
I,
this. Go ahead, Jose. Go ahead.
I believe the way that we're going to be setting up this go round is the 8 hour boot camp to be followed up with a test the next day, the next morning. Um, it's there's a lot of data in there. There's going to be a lot of things that when we go over it, one of the reasons why we're waiting right now is because we're trying to absorb the new um, HIPAA updates, so that
Yes.
way we can teach it properly. But basically, that 8 hours is going to go in. We actively try not to bore you, but we are going to bombard you with a lot of information. And you're going to see if you're attaching the information to your own use case, where there's always a lot of holes, but will help you in that boot camp with different ways to plug those holes based on the size of organization that you have. There's a lot of ways
Yep.
to comply with HIPAA that you don't know that you're doing, but because you're not documenting, there's no proof of it, therefore you don't do it. So it's very much learning how that game is played.
Yep.
Um,
And just to piggyback off that, we are essentially taking this certification, which we used to do in person. Now we're offering it online. Our official date of release is going to be sometime in April. So the link that I
yeah,
attach, it's sort of an early bird special. If you're interested in taking this course, as I mentioned, we're going to be offering this online. The course is about 10 hours. Um, but like I said,
Jennifer, I see your question, and I want to dive deeper into it next week, but I'll tell you right now that anytime someone says that something is compliant, it's because the person is not using it. Everything is compliant as long as no information is being accessed. The human element is always the problem. So either, you don't know how to use the Apple Watch and turn off the setting where it's always at voice command, or there's a lot of different ways to do it. Apple used to have a lot more backdoor hacks back in the day. If anybody remembers the first couple of iPods where you could put music on there that wasn't from iTunes and all those fun little tricks, right?
mhm,
But they really closed down or excuse me, streamlined the products so you don't have as many backdoors to do that kind of thing. But this isn't just because the case is for Apple, this doesn't mean that these other smartwatches are not just as susceptible. Shoot, I even saw the Ray-Bans that are voice activated that can record and take pictures and everything. Super slick,
oh
super
yeah,
slick. I've seen them. But there's plenty of compliance issues, and part of the problem is that we're in the Wild West. Until the cases catch up, the laws are not built for this level of technology or where we're going. So it's really going to be up to what these how these judges interpret the laws and how these fines come through, and if there's any teeth on this, just or if it's just from the civil side. Because remember, this Siri case has nothing to do with healthcare. This is merely general information, general use case. So if you start going down that healthcare route, you you start opening a can of worms.
right.
Because if you're one, let's just put a number to it real quick before we jet. If you're a provider and you're seeing only 30 patients a day, you're working 22 days a month and you're at a hospital, right? That is 22 times 30, we're looking at 660, 660
Yep.
patients that we're
Yep.
seeing in a month, right? That's not to mention all of the other patients that could be tangentially captured on that watch. Um, you those mics are really good. It's whoo.
I was gonna say I
Um,
have an Apple Watch myself, and hell, I find myself I hit a button or it's got like a knob on the side. You hold that
yep,
down for a second or two, and I won't even I'm not intentionally trying to use it, but
yep,
sometimes depending on how I'm positioned or if I'm
yep,
working out or something, it triggers the Siri, So it's like
yeah.
sometimes you might
So I
not even
mean,
know
like,
that you're
yeah. So
using.
there's so this it Jennifer, you're asking a great question. Again, I always go back to what is our risk management profile? Have we assessed the risk on something like this? But we can that's definitely one of the things that we'll go over next week when we discuss this, because I don't want to discuss just the court case, but I want to discuss how do we limit our risk, because we're the covered entity, right? In this scenario, if someone sues us, we would have to sue Apple.
Yeah.
Same way that the healthcare industry is suing Change or any EHR that gets hacked, right? So cool, cool. So I think that's all we've got. Looking forward to that Siri conversation, because I'm a Droid guy anyway, so I'm gonna have fun with this. But there's
Oh,
the
are
same
you?
risk, whether you're a
Actually,
Droid guy or you're an Apple guy, that the risk is still there. This product is essentially the product use is essentially the same and the product risk is the same. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it'll be fun to play with and fun to figure out how these things are manipulated. And I mean, we haven't even talked about all the AI stuff that goes through that could also cause problems down the road, but I don't want to open that can of worms just yet.
We can
So,
dive into that separately. We gotta
yeah,
space these
exactly.
things out.
Exactly. So, cool guys. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And as I mentioned, that link that I provided earlier regarding the CHSO Certified HIPAA Security Officer training, it's just if you're interested in learning more about it, like I said, it's not a payment wall or anything like that. But if you're generally interested in learning more or interested in potentially taking that certification, please register. It's sort of an early bird registration link. Just to keep track of everybody that's interested, and we will be sending more information out in these months to come as well. So, but other than that, Jose, appreciate your time as always.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see everybody next week. And just look out for the registration link that should go out sometime tomorrow. So just be on the lookout for that registration link, guys.
Anytime, Sheena, anytime. Bye.
Thank you.
Sunshine.